Hey, this is Mark Washington, MTC Media. You know, it didn't seem like the Americans could enjoy winning the gold medal for more than, 2 hours before everyone started looking to 2028. I'm going to be frank with you. I was looking to 2028 last week. And so I have my own list now. This list is not going to be an infographic thing, meaning, oh, these are the 12 players. I think there's a lot of things that you have to take in consideration. Who's going to play? Are they currently in the player pool, or have they been in the player pool? And if they're not, and that's going to certainly pertain to a couple of people I have on my list. Obviously, this is 2024. Don't know about injuries, projections, whether players want to play. And the final thing is that this is going to be based on how the roster has been constructed, what Grant Hill showed us, how it's been constructed somewhat under Jerry Colangelo, because Colangelo and Grant Hill have a lot of similarities. They do have differences if you judge by this Olympic Games in roster construction. And the thing that you have to also keep into consideration, Grant Hill had a different situation than Colangelo in the sense that with Grant Hill, he had very early commitments from LeBron James, Steph Curry, and KD. And those were questions of would those three want to play. And they very quickly came out with, oh, no, we want to play. And they started recruiting and all this sort of stuff. And that's probably not going to be the case, obviously, in 2028. So Grant Hill's roster construction could look closer to Colangelo's. What we're not going to do is 12 of the biggest names, 12 of the all-stars, 12 of these guys get it in the NBA, because since 2004 was the last time the United States built a roster that way. And that was after a ton of teams, ton of players turned down invitations to play. United States do not build their roster that way anymore. So no matter what the fan perspective is, it's not realistic to put the 12 hottest names up there and tell me they're making $340 million or they've done. It's not what our roster construction looks like. And to be frank with you, it's not what the roster construction has looked like in a while, either in FIBA World Cup, where there are other challenges, and the Olympics. So we're working on the premise of this is realistically how the United States have been building rosters since Colangelo up to Grant Hill now. So I wanted to get that out the way, okay? So we're going to start at the center spot, and you're going to start with Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis. And again, this is going to be one of those, do they want to come back? Probably both will be offered to come back, but Anthony Davis and Embiid is always going to be health. So my thing is, if both of them come back, then you look at the three center setup that Team USA has been using. So the third person, if Embiid and AD come back, the third person is Chet Holmgren. Okay, for that position. If one of the two come back, then it's Chet Holmgren and Evan Mobley. So it would be AD, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, or Embiid, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, if one of the two decides to come back. If neither one starts to come back, then you slide Bam Adebayo to the center position, and then you have Adebayo, Evan Mobley, and Chet Holmgren. So that's why I mean about this is not going to be an infographic, because the outlets putting infographics back are making wild assumptions on who's going to be playing. And I just don't do things that way. So we're going to work on that Bam Adebayo can stay at the forward spot. So the combination of the center will be 3 out of 4 of Holmgren, Embiid, AD, Mobley. It'll be 3 out of those 4. And Adebayo falls to the wing spot, so he's one of the wings. Obviously, Jason Tatum, he should be out of his feelings by 2028. Helm, and then we have Banchero, who was on our FIBA World Cup team that wasn't on this team. He would also be a wing. And now we get to our first person who isn't in the player pool. And this also depends a lot on health. But Zion Williamson would be the other one. Zion Williamson and his body and his game of how he grew it, especially what he showed when he was healthy last season and he had dropped some weight. That is a perfect international body, a guy who can physically get to the front of the rim, and I do mean physically get to the front of the rim, a guy who can grab rebounds, a guy who can get stickbacks, a guy who can get to the free throw line, a guy who you can't bump off when he is making cuts off the ball, a guy who can run through all the gripping and grabbing when you're cutting and doing all those things off the ball that's called in the NBA, but not necessarily called in FIBA. So again, he is currently not in the player pool. But if he gets into the player pool, and if Grant Hill can go dookie on dookie here and find a way to convince him to play, he would be that wing. So we would have 4 wings with Banchero, Tatum, Adebayo, and Williamson. Obviously, based on the center position, if Chet Holmgren is one of the guys, which I would suspect that he will, Chet Holmgren could play 4 and slide also down to the pool of wings. And this is another thing with the whole versatility and how versatile these players can be and how versatile this team could be. We're down to the guards. Obviously, Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton. Those 3 right off the bat coming back from 24 into 28. Now we're going to start with someone who, again, is currently not in the player pool that I would speak to about getting into the player pool, and that would be Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey's speed and ability to push the ball. Some of the other things he can do, I'll give you a great comparison with that. Tyrese Maxey could be FIBA Patty Mills. If you look at Patty Mills, especially when he was younger, if you look at him through the lens and what he did in FIBA competition, Patty Mills was a problem. Tyrese Maxey could be that guy on steroids. But again, wasn't in the player pool. I'm going to make the assumption or say that one of the things that Grant Hill needs to do is take a look at that, even if it's a FIBA World Cup invite, a way to get him into the player pool and to be considered to play in 2028. And then the last roster spot would be Jalen Williams, because he's a 3-and-D extraordinaire. Again, there's always been positions on this team for that. Don't tell me about, well, in the NBA, this player is better than Jalen Williams. That's not how the roster's been constructed. You got to get over that. So I don't want to hear that. That gets no play. So that's a 3-and-D extraordinaire. So that would be my initial 12 for the 2028 rosters. Now, there are some apologies. Apologies to Jalen Suggs, who is obviously, and this is the most overplayed comparison, but I'm going to play it there. He is Derek White. He would be the Derek White of this team, a guy who can come in, be a bigger point guard, those type of things. Also, Cade Cunningham. Apologies to Cade. And last but not least, Scotty Barnes. So those are guys that if one of these guys drop out, or one of these guys slump off, or one of these guys are injured, those are starting with the guys that I would look for to replace those guys. Of the guys that I had on the list. And obviously any of the one center that's off of there, which will be Mobley, or again, if AD and Embiid both decide not to play in 28. Guys left out that I hear a lot of, Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, if you look at the FIBA World Cup and how it progressed, as it progressed, he got worse. So I'm a Knicks fan and all, but no, not for this. Jaylen Brown, no. Donovan Mitchell, no. De'Aaron Fox, I go back and forth on. Trey Murphy III, once again, another one of those 3-point specialists. Cooper Flagg. My thing about Cooper Flagg, and I will say this in 2024, Cooper Flagg has not played 1 second for Duke. Cooper Flagg has not played 1 second in the NBA. And until I've seen that, Cooper Flagg is not going to be on this list. So that's my guys. I mean, if you want to say what is the Marcus Washington player pool, it's Holmgren, Embiid, AD, Evan Mobley, Banchero, Tatum, Adebayo, Zion Williamson, Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Williams, okay, Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes. Those are my top right then and there. as of 2024. And then the secondary list, like I said, is like Brunson and Flagg and Brown and Mitchell and Fox and Murphy the third. Those are my secondary list. So that's the way I see 2028 under the scopes and the rules. Like I said at the very beginning, of it's going to be a list that is consistent with how we are currently building a team. It's not going to be a list for 2K25. It's not going to be a list for fantasy basketball, or be a list of let's just put a bunch of names on it. Because like I said, from 2004 on, we've stopped doing that. So, Smarks Washington, MTC Media.